Welcome back to another episode of the Teen Talks podcast. My name is Michael Speciale, and we are here with Mathew Guido.
Hello, hello.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man.
Matthew is a photographer. I would call you a creative photographer. Is that a good role?
I'll take it.
He actually was on the cover of Lightroom.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. I was scrolling through the page from working with reputable people like Fashion Santa. That was also really cool. I saw that. So welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Even though this is the Teen Talks podcast where we talk about teen related problems, I felt like it was really cool to get an adult on here. A proper.
I was a teen at one point.
You were a teen at one point, so I think you have that advice. And he's a creative person, just like myself. And I felt like, why not a better way of just having, we were supposed to have a conversation in like August, and I'm like, you know what? And then when you DM me and you're like, yo, like we should do like a podcast, I'm like, that would be great.
Yeah.
Cause I would want a conversation like that to be recorded. That's the only reason why I do these podcasts. So I have good conversations with people that I could look back on and that people could hear on too. So I want to start this podcast, just giving a little bit background of yourself and mostly why you decided to do photography as like a career.
Let's see. I guess like I've always been creative, and I never really felt, especially in school, that I flowed in the like linear like academic way.
Mm-hmm.
So the things I liked about myself growing up weren't necessarily like celebrated, and I had a hard time in school, and it was just weird because I'm like, I like my point of view towards things, and I was obsessed with video games and fantasy and anime and stuff like that, where I was like excited, but I kind of felt like I didn't know my footing necessarily.
You didn't have like a role. Yeah,
actually, you know what? I think my first inkling of like, hey, I think I want to do art was like drawing like Dragon Ball Z characters and stuff like that. So I got into photography, I would say, through artwork, illustration, and then it just kind of picked up through wanting to do like character design and like designing costumes and doing like creating those things on my friends and then taking pictures.
So when was the first time you got your hands on the camera, like actually worked with the camera? Was it like through school, or was it through like family members?
Definitely wasn't through school. So actually, funny enough, my little sister, when she was like 8, was like, I want to be a photographer. I don't even know where I came from. So my dad got her like a little like 1.2 megapixel Kodak camera, which like at the time was like amazing. Yeah. Now it's like complete garbage. But so she was like always playing with this camera. And my brother, who was an illustrator, painter, musician, and artist, he was more than dabbling in it. Like he was creating a body of work in a portfolio. So I spent most of my, like, let's say, beginning of my teenage years, so this is like 12, 13, 14, like piggybacking, watching a portfolio being built.
Yeah.
And then when I was 15, my brother passed away, and he had this incomplete, like, body of work.
My condolences, bro.
Thanks. And, you know, it was like, what a position to be in. Like, now there's this unfinished body of work that, like, I've been a part of the process of it building. I couldn't focus or continue in the school system because I was so like not stimulated by that. And I just became hyper focused on, you know, continuing to create. And I almost felt like I was doing something wrong, which is the funny part looking at it now.
You were doing something wrong with photography?
Well, doing something wrong by focusing on a portfolio or doing something creative instead of like getting my, you know, life together or
grades up.
Yeah. So it just kind of like, I feel like I was in this like body of water and the current just took me that way. So it was a really natural like falling into doing it.
It's kind of like what I believe in right now is like fate, you know, like everything happens for a reason.
Have it on my arm.
No way. I did not book that. Literally fate. Like I believe that we're all put on this earth for a purpose, and we have to live our lives, and slowly things will come together, and like you said, the current will like push us in a way.
Man.
You know,
I'm full of metaphors, so I'm gonna excuse myself now. They're gonna be flowing out as I
love it. I love it. It's very expressive. It really it shows me the creative side of both of us, that we could like relate to each other with using metaphors. But so we talked about like you getting into your photography, right? I just wanted to know like with your photos, like there's a feeling towards everything. And I don't know if that's with like the colors or is that with the expressions. You have a certain style to your photos where it's like serious and either dim colors or very bright and vibrant colors with like use of reflection.
Yeah.
What inspired you to go in that direction of photography?
Well, I guess overall, like when I got into, so think about like pencil drawing, it's black and white, obviously it's pencil and paper. So my initial like comfort zone, I would say, was black and white photography. I was just understanding lighting, where highlights should be, like just learning about everything that way. Probably the right place to start because it's like the foundation of everything.
When we did photography class, that's where we started black and white.
And that led me to just literally taking black and white photography, which is perfect because like you're focusing on all the important foundation elements of lighting and highlights and shadows and midtones and all that stuff. So I learned all about exposure and composition. I guess my references weren't photography, they were drawings. So I noticed that my photography was a little bit more graphic.
It was, bro. It looked like video games, man.
Yeah.
Like I felt it.
Good. I'm happy. And then I got into oil painting, and then I tried to replicate that in the photography side too, which I was pulling inspiration from like heavy, like big iconic artists, Caravaggio, and like my work looked very gothic at that point. I guess my first album or portfolio was black and white, and then it was very like gothic and very heavy blacks, super dramatic. But I found that it didn't really have a commercial viability, and it was a little bit scary for some people.
If you're talking age right now, how old were you?
Maybe like someone your age would think like, hey, in 5 or 10 years, where am I going to be? So it's like, I'm like, hey, I'm here. Like, I'll tell you.
Exactly. You never know, right?
So I would say probably 18 to like 23. I went from that heavy black and white style to like this really gothic, like very rich, deep, dark area. I liked my work a lot then. I was like super stoked. I was happy. I'm really hard on myself with
we all are,
yeah,
right?
like especially with my craft. I always want to get better.
I would sit there editing for fucking hours. I would always find little things, and sometimes you just gotta let them go because it's perfect in someone else's eyes, but maybe it might not be in yours. But when you're a perfectionist, it's so hard to like, finish something.
Yeah, and like it wasn't to say that I couldn't have stayed in that lane, but I just felt like it wasn't like embodying everything that I wanted, because I'm pretty lighthearted. I'm like into really quirky, campy stuff.
Yeah.
So this work was so heavy, but I was expressing that side of myself at the time, and I was growing through. Like if you looked at my portfolio, you could almost see like where my mental health was and like emotionally where I was at,
which is really cool. I mean, that's why I do these videos. It's like a timestamp of where I am.
Yeah,
so like That's so sick, because art is like, I think that people who don't use art as an expressive way of like telling where they are and how they're feeling, like people do that with music, right? They through the lyrics, with photography through the colors, drawing through the shades, right? Anything from cinematography to like how you angle the camera to like these cool lights.
Yeah, and I realized though that so much of what I was doing, like holding people's attention and stimulating them. So I'm thinking about like the full sensory experience. Like if this photo could smell, what would it smell like? If you could taste it, what would it taste like?
Interesting. Yeah.
Not literally, but like, you know what I mean? So I was going through this process, and I'm like, something is missing and I don't know what it is. So I had a year of just being in this creative rut. So to people in your age bracket that maybe feel stuck or don't know what the next step is, you got to trust the process. There's no yellow brick road. You just have to keep moving, put your best foot forward, and things will fall into place the way they're supposed to. At least like that's what I told myself, and it worked for me.
Hey, so, man, there it is, right? You're a living example of like proof,
Yeah, and I pull a lot of inspiration from music as well. So even the music I was listening to was changing at that time. And then I had this sort of realization. Let me see if I can verbalize it. Imagine like the Mona Lisa, something that you can like clearly figure out in your head. And split it into like 10 different colors, like a all red Mona Lisa and all blue Mona Lisa, like whatever, all that, right? Get 100 people in a room and say which one's your favorite. People are gonna pick their favorite based on the color of this image versus the actual content. So nothing's changing. Her eyes aren't changing. Like the hair's not changing, and nothing's changing but the colors. So I realized that there was a layer of like visual manipulation that I wasn't accessing without color. So I thought, let me create these like vibes with colors that will cater to different people and allow my audience to have favorites. So I wasn't just working with like a red palette or a blue palette or a yellow palette. I was creating, and I was actually branding my own colorways. Like I made a colorway called Nintendo Sunset, and that was using like reds, greens, and blues. But if you saw the body of work, you could pick a favorite. Like, oh, I like that one. It's more like this. Or
Was this still like drawing, or were you leaning to photography, or was it a little bit of both?
Photo. I kind of grew out of the drawing as the main focus, but I still very much use that as my, like, when I go and I'm trying to figure out what's going on with myself and I'm like doing all the fine tuning. So I kind of draw for me to figure out my creativity, but I don't.
That's like the way of passing time.
Yeah. So I realized that, holy shit, like color basically makes me a magician, because now I can just like make these illusions and control people's reactions. So let me see if I can do something super high impact and get people to really respond to it. And that was a creative that I did, and the shoot was called Eye Candy. And that was the shoot that, like, as soon as I put it out there, it got picked up and put as the cover of Lightroom. So I got directly messaged from Adobe, which was...
How did you, like, but with this exposure, man, like... What did you do? Did you email these people? Did you do it as a competition?
This is a good question. I think if I have to say the main question I'm asked, people are like, how did that happen?
How did you get from drawing in your room to the cover of Lightroom, you know?
I think when I was working, so I made photography my career, and that's like a really mixed thing, because you're thinking about business, income, like all of that stuff. So I think for a long time, I lost track of, this is like a 3-year period. I was so focused on making money and being like stable and all of that stuff that I wasn't growing my expression. So by the time that this happened, I was doing it for me. I'm like, this is my biggest step forward for myself.
Were you doing like weddings and stuff?
I did all of that. That's something that a lot of people don't know. Like in my come up phase,
you have to, right? Because
I was doing everything. Like I figured, what does a Mathew Guido version of a wedding look like? What does that look like if it's a maternity photo or this or that? And I'm sure I have some type of unique point of view towards something that maybe before I was writing off, because I'm like, oh, like I'm in it for the art. I'm not doing it for, I don't want to be an event photographer or a wedding photographer.
Yeah,
but you learn a lot. It's like boot camp. Like it's live. You have to make decisions and do things.
Like, why did you buy the camera? And I'm like, oh, I'm just a YouTuber. I want to be a filmmaker. And like that term filmmaker has become so cliche because everyone could do it on their iPhone. They're like, oh, look, I'm a filmmaker, right? Like they don't understand it. So I just thought that it's kind of cool that, you were talking about, the come up as in like, I didn't just do photos like this. Like I had to work my way doing things that I didn't really want. And you took things out of that. Like what's a Mathew Guido version of a wedding? What's a Mathew Guido of a employee picture? You know what I'm saying? Like there's always a way you could twist it, but you gotta give in to the commercial side of photography in order to do what you really want.
The thing is, like, when you're trying to create anything, especially on portfolio, you're so heavily like personally zoomed in and involved that you just want to get there so quick. This isn't a race, it's a marathon, and you're also growing through what you're going through at those times in your life. So maybe in the beginning, I think I was so focused on like, I want to have the best portfolio ever. Then it turned into, I want to have the most realized version of my creativity at this time in my life. And I feel like that was when things changed for sure. Because
you definitely saw, like, you're looking back at your photos from 5 years ago. Are they better than they were before? I love the fact of creating, right? But especially like now, to get like paid at a young age, like they don't understand, like it's low demand. You're not supplying them enough to make them be like, hey, you deserve this price.
Plus now, like, everybody wants as much content as possible for as little as, like, and this is something that I got into photography pre-social media. So the shift that happened from, having like, I had a MySpace, I had a Facebook page, and that was like, I had obviously my website, but I was still going to meetings with like a printed portfolio. Now I can't even get to a printed portfolio meeting because they've already gone on my social and made an opinion about me. So I kind of realized how important it is to, at least have like at least keep my Instagram so it looks like a menu of who I am. So people can just like take a a little look and they're like, oh, okay, I get what this guy does.
Yeah, because it's like a theme. There's no margins for creativity. You can't market. But I see the why people go to school for it. And honestly, I hate marking. I hate testing. But the information, it's valuable. It's cool. Learning about theory, it gives you a whole other perspective of like photography and like the art form of it rather than just it being commercialized. Every time I see like videos of like, do you want to go to a 14-day film school? It's like, you're not learning film. You're learning how to commercialize and make money doing freelance video. There's so much more than just film or like, and that's the guy kept saying in his lectures. He goes, this is not filming. This is not filming. There's so much more than just looking at a screen and pressing record, right? I think it's so oversimplified that everyone thinks they could do it and like which they can, but the photography part of it and the creative style, you're born with it. I actually wanted to talk about, you're very focused on photography as a whole, still images. Have you ever considered doing video? I have my friend, she's all about video as in like a whole of like, creative colors, projector style.
Yeah, I'm directing as well, so I'm working on my sort of like, I haven't necessarily come out with a body of work in video because I'm trying to get it to a specific a variety point, but I've done 3 or 4 projects I'm super proud of.
These are pretty cool too.
Oh yeah, very cool.
Like, she loves her color. That's what she goes, oh my God.
What up, Maya? There you go. Good job. Good job. Yeah, I like this vibe a lot.
It's creative, right?
Yeah.
So, and she's like very motivated when it comes to color, right? So when she saw your profile, she was like, oh my God, this is so cool, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I wanted to like ask you, like, is that more of video than still image? Did you ever cross that border of the video side of things and creativity?
I came into, so in, what was it, maybe 2008, Canon came out with the 5D Mark II. And that was like when the whole DSLR video movement happened. So almost every photographer at that time had to make a choice like, oh, do I do video as well?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of saturation of really not great video going out there. So I focused on staying in the photography lane, and I wanted to, I was so on that journey that I couldn't really deviate. And maybe only in the past like 2 or 3 years have I like expanded the command that I have outside of it just being still. So I've directed a couple music videos and I've done a few like commercial video projects. And I was so actually surprised how natural that was for me too.
Yeah.
So that's part of
this. Because it's bouncing back and forth, right? When I do photography especially, it's like, I feel like I have the creative skill to get a good photo. I would say the exposure, I still got to work on. The lighting, I still got to work on, because video, you see your exposure on frame while you're recording, so you know if you're over and underexposed. But as a photographer, I don't know whether to like face the lighting or like where the exposure is. Like, I'm not experienced enough to the point where I could go and take a good photo automatically and get the exposure correct. And obviously that takes practice. But like you said, I want to stay in my lane of video. Like, this is what I want to do. I know I could take good photos outside of it, but I'm going to focus all my creativity where it comes to like video projects and focus on cinematography rather than stills. Being creative it's hard to monetize, because sometimes you got to sacrifice some of your creativity. I call this the creative dilemma, where it's like you think it's the best until someone else views it and they take out pieces of what you think looks good, because it's subjective, right? And it kind of, that's why freelancing for me is such a turnoff, because it's like what I think is great and what I think are like important are not important to this person that I'm doing it for. And as the job as a freelancer, I have to please the person. But when it comes to like my videos, like my YouTube videos or anything, it's like, even though I'm not getting paid for it, and I would be getting paid for like these music videos or freelancing or whatever, there's a sense of community within myself of when I do these videos for me rather than for another person. So like, before we get into like the monetization of the videos, what do you think about that creative dilemma?
It's okay. So I think when you're going through freelance stuff, you're still in a mode sometimes in the beginning. At least I'm going to just speak from my own experience.
Yeah.
I was still finding my own validation as a creative. So when I was taking on a project for someone, what I'm looking out for isn't necessarily to complete the task that they're hiring me for. I was still so focused on trying the next coolest thing or wanting it to look a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I transcended past that and I got, self-validation, I realized that my brand is a tool for this person to express their brand with.
Mm-hmm.
And having management and agency and all that stuff supporting you allows you to become a product that they're selling. This is the way that Mathew does something, and it protects me in all the ways that I like to do things, instead of me directly speaking to a client and trying to convince them of something. There's like that really nice buffer area. So it's just like a mediator.
Agencies.
Yeah. So they're mediating like monetary stuff. They're mediating all the logistics. They're basically letting you just focus on the art versus all the business stuff, which is where things go wrong really quick.
Facts.
So, yeah.
And starting out young, it's super hard because some people don't have an agency or have to wait for it or have to work for one. And in order to work for one, you need a portfolio. In order to get portfolio, you have to give in to things that you like, and it's kind of sucks. It's like, I would have kept this. How about what if it's all about a bunch of what ifs. What if this person would have liked the way I did it instead of the way my clientele.
One of the biggest art forms in being an artist is being able to be a business person. And being a business person, you have to have strategy, structure, communication, all these things that you're not necessarily focused on because you're all about your artwork.
Yeah.
But those things are going to be the machine that makes you survive and continue as an artist. So you have to give it the same amount of respect and time. For myself, I realized that things get really weird with small to medium-sized businesses because it's very like handshaky and like, oh, I'll do it for this amount, and then things change and a lot, things go wrong. So something that I did early on to protect myself was I would take a 50% deposit up front to initiate me to be on the project, and then I wouldn't give the files until they gave me the other 50%. So it was like a fair way of doing exchanges, because I tried to do contracts in the beginning and I found that so many people just didn't want to work with me because it just felt like, I don't want to sign a contract. I'll hire someone that just second message and they'll do it.
Yeah.
So on the small to medium business side, there's a lot of that stuff that even like I've been doing this since 2006. So
yeah, I was like 4.
What year were you born?
2002.
For real?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So I've been doing this for that long.
Yeah.
And those first 5 years, I had tons of issues with wanting to be working. So I said yes to anything.
Yeah, me too.
And then getting kind of ripped off, and then being mad at myself because I knew better, but I didn't know even my character at that time. Like I didn't know how to speak up for myself or stand up for myself. And in this sense, it made me grow up as a person as well, which was great because, I was walking the walk and I had to talk the talk basically. So
yeah, for sure. Like I try my best to insert fairness with it, but I think people underestimate the amount of time and effort it comes to creating a video, creating the perfect photo, and how hard it is to not only flip it to in a substantial time that they give us, but the strategy that comes with it, the creative design, the creative aspects of everything, and how long you beat yourself up for learning a specific skill and then wanting you to just take it out, and you're just like have to be like, okay, right, you gotta do it, because at the end of the day, if their product is, if they're paying you for something they don't like, that's just a bad on your name, right?
Yeah.
And they spread that. And when you're young, man, well, when I'm young, right, starting out, right, because you got your shit figured out, I'm still figuring mine out. When I'm young and I'm like, I try my best to show what I have to offer, but it seems to never really be enough because of the age and experience.
Yeah, because that's hard to, when you're being paid as a young person, like there's already some type of viewpoint on you that you don't know what you're doing because you're young, right?
Yeah.
So I went through a lot of that.
And don't get me wrong. I'm not the best,
Yeah.
I still have room to grow in my own ways. I think I'm great of what I'm doing. And, but some people may think, elsewhere. When you're talking about a specific brand, people literally surround their whole brand off of music videos.
Yeah.
I film music videos. I don't know what I film. I'm just trying to get my hands on anything, right? And until I get my certain niche, until I like what I do, and I'll do it. I'll continue doing it. But until then, it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep doing me, and that's why these teen talks are a perfect
that's
thing.
the irony of this journey, because you keep moving forward, but it's hard to navigate any type of direction because it's different for every person. So as much as you, someone will give you advice like, you know what, you should do it like this, or you should do it like that. The only real, like solid advice that I would give that is keeping your money behavior in check and making sure that you're understanding what taxes mean and like how to do all that stuff. That's fine. But in regards to working for different people, it's different every time. And until you're really, really validated as an artist, where you trust and believe in yourself and you know that you're delivering the best quality content for whoever's hiring you, you know, it's easy to get swayed because it's your client, they're paying you. But at the same time, you also have to be able to say no and be a professional and, you know, gear and sway whatever's going on in the direction that you see fit. That's why you're a professional. So
I think that it's hard, that boundary of, you know, being viewed as a young person doing what they want to do. And like, you know, I think a lot of people underestimate the skill you have, especially when you're young because of lack of experience. But the only way you could really get experience is if you just start.
That's because we're running into the world that we think, the adult world. But I'll give you an interesting piece of advice. So now that I'm 31 right now. Mm-hmm. When I was younger, I was just trying to act so professional, so much like I wanted to be respected and regarded with as a serious threat in the photography world. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until I kind of changed my point of view a little bit. So instead of me trying to, you know, show how good I am at what I'm doing, which is what it's the easiest thing for anybody to do when you're trying to, if you're doing a video, you want to show how good you are, obviously, right? But my point of view changed, and I started saying to people, listen, like, I'm younger than you, so my point of view is coming from the most relevant space with technology and with the whole digital revolution. I'm offering you the cream of the crop of someone born in 1989. So if I'm usually the youngest, for a long time, I was one of the youngest people like in the industry that was doing what I was doing. And instead of me feeling bad about being young, I was like, no, I'm a threat to everybody here because I'm what's coming. I know more than them, younger than they do. So they should be scared of me. And that was how I had to like get myself out of that and say, I trust what I'm doing. And I know I'm like really great at retouching, where a lot of these guys that are 5-10 years older than me, they came from the film side and they had a real struggle with converting what they did in film to understanding Photoshop. I came from an actual illustration background, which I grew into digital illustration. So my retouching was great and seamless. Mm-hmm. So I just thought, okay, I actually have more experience because I'm at the forefront of where technology is going. So I just have to change my point of view on this. And it's not so much about how young I am or how professional I am or how great my portfolio is. It's really about how I'm going to sit in my own skin to make somebody say, I'm going to pay this guy and trust him because he knows how to navigate any situation and what's going on.
What was your biggest jump when it came to like really selling yourself? You know, like where was it when it was just like, okay, you know what, maybe this is huge for my career as a whole?
Yeah, I have like a definite story for that.
Go ahead, bro.
Okay, so my dad is like a very, very thinking outside of the box kind of guy. And he always spoke to us in metaphors, and like my dad would tell me half a story and then make us finish the rest of the story just to like see where we're going. That's cool. Yeah, it was really cool. I can't believe now how much that benefited me. I did a presentation, and in this presentation, I had to basically convince people why they should hire me. So it's just like, yeah, okay, like who are you? Why do we care? Yeah. So instead of showing like, hey, well, look, this is this fashion shoot I did, and this is like this, and this is like, look at this photo shoot I did, which was my previous approach. Like, let me just sell what I did, but I wanted to sell my thinking this time, so it was different. Mm-hmm. So I brought a bowl of strawberries in a plastic bag. So I asked everybody, okay, I want everybody in the room to close your eyes and imagine a big red bowl of strawberries. are there leaves on them? Is there water droplets on them? Are they big? Are they small? What color's the bowl? Like, can you describe it to me? Go. Can you describe it to me? Go. Can you describe it to me? Go. So I'm getting all these different like versions of this one thing. And I'm like, that's so interesting that even on something that's so like literal, that there can be so many deviations. So if this company is trying to create something, how many different versions are there of the centralized idea? And my job, if you hire me, is to centralize all these different things, right? So everyone in the room described their version of this bowl of strawberries. So then I took my bowl and put it on the table, and I just said, this is what I do. I take things that are here and I help realize them into something tangible. So
fire, bro.
Yeah. So
drop like, the mic on them.
There, I dropped the bowl of strawberries. So, but the example through that was like, let me pull something out of you. So for a brand, for example, when they're trying to work on a campaign and there's a focus, there's already broken telephone going from the creative director to this person to myself. So if you can actually fine tune that, so we're all looking at the same bowl with the same amount of strawberries in it and stuff, like I'm pretty sure that has value, and that's why you should hire me.
And the thing with that is the standing out part. That's where everyone wants to fit into a category.
Yeah.
I want to make music. Okay, I got to rap about this, this, and this because this is what's trending.
Well, listen,
right?
Just on that point, like let's say there's a rapper and you're hearing the same things like
over
money,
again,
girls, this, that, turning up. What if someone's just rapping about strawberries? You'd be like, okay, I can rate that. Like, that's cool.
Because there's outside the box, thinking outside the box. And like, there's always, as much as everyone has done something once, there's always going to be something new. And I think reaching for like a new way of doing things is like the innovation of art. And that's how we came where we are today, right? Yeah. Learning the past and history of filmmaking. It's like, we started with traditional film noir where it was just certain angles, right? We started with, and then now we came to like a Tarantino film where he literally just broke up everything and dissed everything that they told him about classical narrative, and just this is what his product was, and it showed that there's no end to creativity, right? And that's so cool. I mean, I'm gonna use that if I ever get a job.
I should brand it.
You should trademark it, man.
I should do it. Yeah, the strawberry effect. I don't know.
The strawberry effect. It's a perfect example because your goal as a creator is to take what they have in their head and put it on paper and show them that you could do. So when it comes to like visualizing it as a creator of photography, it's like a beautiful metaphor. So you are a man of metaphors.
I am. Very much so. But that's also why I can like dabble with directing and into the video side, because the only thing that's changing is maybe the actual craft, going from a still image to a moving thing. But my thinking is still in like it's right in that pocket, right? And
Facts.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm confident with that stuff.
Confidence is huge when it comes to like photography or filmmaking or anything creative, because at the end of the day, it's subjective. And what you make might not be appealing to someone else, but your confidence might attract it.
Yeah, and there's layers too, because like when you're creating with large teams, you have to delegate your creativity to other people for them to create their own expression on it.
Yeah.
So if I'm working with a full team, like on a fashion shoot or something, I'm working with a stylist, I'm working with hair and makeup, I'm working with models, and then there's people like producing stuff, maybe set designers, but they're all taking direction from my idea. So if I'm not firm on my own idea, like I don't have the right to tell these people like, what to be doing or how to do it. And that was like a motivation for me to really like go into something knowing what I'm going to say and what I want. And then the real trick on it, or the irony, is sometimes you can be so prepared for something and you're like so set and it's not working. So you have to have that adaptability to be able to deviate and make shifts happen. But that is a battle of your own ego too. So it's like this whole thing that goes on.
I think ego is important too, because there's a balance of it. It's not having too much or having too little. It's how to control it. You have to be confident in your work to a point where, you're not selling yourself short. Right? You have to be like, my work is good and I think my work is good. Obviously not to the point where you just cut off people's expression and their creative outlet too. Like you have to be open-minded, but at the end of the day, you can't have people throw you around. Like if I find that someone's using my creativity, my skill, and only benefiting me more than I'm benefiting them, it's like that the unfairness, man. Like I had so many people that like underpaid me for shit, and I did it out of, you know what? I always had this mindset of like, I'm young, I need experience, right?
Yeah.
And I'd be working on videos for like 5-6 days, like back to back, sitting in my room, dedicating my whole time to this one person's video, and then they could just trash it.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to be open-minded to like the fact of their opinion, but at the end of the day, like, you created this video for a reason. You're going to keep the parts that you think that's why Michael Speciale made it. That's why you hired me to make it. And I think no matter what, yes, I'm definitely open to criticism. I'm definitely open to constructive, like creativity, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we're all authors, and there's always a co-author. There's always different people to, you know, whether it's a stylist that creates a certain image, the cinematographer, the lighting director, the person who's clicking the shutter, the model, every single person has some sort of reason why they are there. And using all everyone's evenly, it's like, you know what, you gotta show yourself like dominance to a point where this is your image. If you guys don't like it, fair enough. Tell me why. Okay, I don't agree. We're going my way anyways, right? And I think you have to, in order to get there, you have to have a good reputation, a good portfolio, you know? Like you have to be known.
The hardest part of that is when people don't believe in you because you don't have that reputation. So you're not only are you managing that day and like creating the content, you're also managing people's view on you and trusting you. So as I've gotten older and built a better reputation for myself, or that's grown, especially, you know, like the Lightroom thing really helped validate what I do.
Facts, man. Like
so
when I saw that,
when I go
I'm
onto
like,
a set, people are like, oh, that guy, like he did this.
Exactly.
So they don't question me, but I earned that through like so many years. So like, man, I don't take that lightly. I'm like, thank you so much. Let's create together. And
I want to know the story of when you first, that Lightroom, when you first got that email, that first picture you saw your image on Lightroom.
It's a pretty crazy story too, because, you know, it's so funny because I still question how this happened. So I was with my parents. So my brother, I told you, that passed away. On his birthday, we always do a dinner. And we were literally like just talking about like, I don't know, like how far I've come and like things like that. And my phone's like up on the table and it just popped up and it was from the senior creative director of Adobe globally. And I'm like, what?
Like a Gmail?
Yeah. Like it just came, no, like the notification came in and I'm like, oh my God, what? They want to take my image for the cover? Like what?
How do they find your image though?
So
sharing?
No. So Adobe has its own creative network called the Behance network, and people that upload things on there are illustrators, photographers, digital artists. So it's like the social media of the industry, I would say.
Cool.
So I uploaded the shoot onto there, kind of like innocently, like, let me see how, like, maybe I'll get some more audience out of this or whatever. And Adobe was sourcing their cover art on the network. So they found me there, then they published it, and then the amount of traffic that just came in from that was crazy.
When was that? What year?
So I shot that in 2016. It released in 2018. That happened in 2017, like when they picked it up. And there was like this 1 year period of me waiting for it to come out. And I'm telling you, like every night I'm like, okay, it's coming. Like I knew it was going to be such a big deal for me.
Yeah.
That was hard.
Yeah. What was the first experience you click on Lightroom and you just see your image?
Yeah, that was really cool. That was super cool.
Who are you around?
No one.
You're just by yourself?
Yeah, just me and my cat.
That's crazy, bro. Like just looking at that, like I can't imagine.
So then I was calling friends. I'm like, can you click on it? And like, does it come up? And it like, sure enough, it was. And then I didn't realize at the time it was also getting printed for the books that go into chapters, Indigo. And those books go to every school globally when you take photography in college or university. So then all these students are seeing it like that.
Bro, that's huge, man.
Yeah. And it blew up on Pinterest right at like that forefront of neon photography becoming popular. So it positioned me as like the leader in that niche. And that's what I get hired for now the most, like to do, you know, neon lighting and stuff that way.
How did you, those pictures?
Yeah.
They're amazing.
Thanks.
What was the process taking those? Because obviously there's so many pictures that you have. Every project's different, but I guess would you say this Lightroom thing was the pinnacle of your career?
Yeah, for now.
So we could focus on that picture with the lady with the glasses. And there's so much going on in there. It's like amazing. I'm going to pop up a bunch of photos. So.
Yeah, the coolest part about it was everybody thinks that I shot those in a studio with like lights and all that stuff. But I had a concept about, so I do a lot of underexposed photography and I maximize the resolution afterwards. So I was on this journey of color theory. And I'm talking like, I would be sitting in a room like this one, turn all the lights blue and think while the lights are blue. And then I turn them like red and think while they're all red. And then as I was doing that, I'm like, I'm not really getting anywhere, but this was like a fun experience because I feel good in these colors. And I'm like, what does that mean? So I was like in this weird spot. And then I started to mix the colors. And then I realized like how different like luminance values and whatnot are happening with different colors. And I was trying to just test stuff in my bedroom. Then I put on a pair of sunglasses because I wanted something to just pop out. And I was like, oh, this would be very lit if I did this properly. So I kind of in my bedroom got to that idea
of like reflection of a sunglass.
Yeah, but then to make it really gangster, I'm like, I'm going to do this on Spadina and only use restaurant neon signs. Because in the reflection of the sunglasses, I didn't want to see something typical like a light or like, you know what I mean? So myself and the crew that was working on it, we went from like Queen and Spadina all the way up to like College and Spadina. And in that journey there, we shot so many different colorways and different looks, and that's how the whole shoot happened.
We reviewed when it comes to like, you know, what your accomplishments are. I think what would be cool if like we have like a timeline where you were in specific ages, right? And like your kind of peaks and lows. So people my age that want to get into fashion, photography, the creative side of something, what the best part of your career was, what the worst part of your career was, and like all like the ups and downs before we get into like this monetizing and like how to grow in a community like this.
Yeah, I think probably I'll start at 18 because like I was still doing creative stuff prior to that, but it wasn't like a thing until I was around 18.
Like monetizing it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I think 18, I was so focused on building the portfolio, getting recognition from peers, like wanting that like achievement style, like look what I'm doing. And at the time too, like I was also going like clubbing a lot because of that age just happened. Yeah. So I had privileges at like venues where I had worked at, and they're like, yeah, you can bring your friends. And, you know, so I just felt so like cool at the time.
Yeah. Who wouldn't?
Yeah. But that was super important. Like the reason I'm bringing that up is I was feeling like that. And then that made me feel like I was successful. That made me feel like, you know, all these good things. Yeah. But that's really short-lived, and like everybody would go through something like that. Then it turned into all my friends are like in school because I'm, you know, 18, 19, 20, 21. And my lifestyle's completely different. I'm not in school. I was self-employed. I have to make my own schedule. The beginning, I'm like, do I sleep in? Because I like doing creative things at night. Is that wrong?
Yeah.
So then you're like trying to wake up early to make yourself feel like you have a job because you're like, I'm supposed to be up and like productive. Like, so there's this whole personal journey that happens in the beginning, but you have to regulate it. It's just a matter of like, hey, like this is one of those weeks where I'm staying up late so I can pull all these ideas out because that's when it comes out for me. And then I'm going to put them into action like the next week and I can start to structure that. So I was just learning how to balance that out and being okay with it. Fixing
structure, man. Yeah. That's why I'm in school, because personally, man, if I had so much free time and I had no deadlines, I don't know where the fuck I would be.
Yeah. You know? And I didn't respond to structure in school. So I was like, how am I going to do this for myself? I don't know how to do this. I just know that I'm good at doing, you know, photography.
Yeah.
So the initial struggle was that it wasn't how talented I was or wasn't. It was, how do I operate and take this seriously? So then I started to get internships, which was great because it started to give me a little bit of a regimented schedule.
How did you get these internships?
Literally emailing people, hitting them up on Facebook. Hey, I'd love to learn from you.
Internships is when it's for free?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I would offer an internship position like, I would love to come and like just clean your studio, have a chit chat with you. You can review my portfolio, or I can come on set with you, or whatever the case is. And Maybe if you like the style that I work in, then maybe you would consider hiring me or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
So I interned a ton. Like I went around like crazy. So I interned a lot in Toronto. I did a bunch in LA because I had it in my head like, oh, like I got to make it. I got to go to LA. And
Yeah.
like, then I did the same thing in New York and the same thing in Europe. So I got a little bit of like a curated experience. And
these were all through someone knowing someone.
Yeah. And like, like I might do a creative, which is like a photo shoot that I just want to do for myself. And the makeup artist that I used works with other photographers. So I'd ask that makeup artist, do you think you could recommend me someone that maybe I would vibe with? Or so it was one of those things. Like I was just trying to figure it out. And oftentimes I was paying for my own flights, paying for my own hotels.
How did you fund this stuff? Through freelance?
Yeah.
You were just bouncing back and forth through internships. I was doing all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Family portraits, like you name it, pictures of people's dogs. Like I was just doing it. Because I always, I remember trying to get into that when I was like really young, like portraits and stuff, but it's uncomfortable because you don't know how to do it and you got to pretend that you do.
Yeah.
And that's literally it. Like you just gotta, I think for me, when I get out of my comfort zone, it's like confidence like fuels me. Like I need to be able to be like, pretend I know what I'm doing in order for them to like be like, oh, okay, I trust this guy. And I think trust is huge. And what I try to do is try to do things for my friends, for people.
Yeah.
Right. Because not only am I doing a video for someone, some random person, but it's for my friends. So I have an easier time kind of, creating these videos or talking to them or like negotiating what they want, what I want. And it's kind of like on a friend base. But when you mix friends and business, it gets so sticky.
So sticky.
And it becomes like, oh, I feel underpaid. I don't feel
worst.
Like, you're asking for too much. And at that time, right now, for me, it's like, they don't care.
Yeah.
I'm giving you business. That's all they see. They don't see my value yet. And my only option to show them my value is by doing what they want. And I think that's where the position I'm in, where it's like making money through video. I would love to do that, but I'm at the point where I don't have to pay bills right now.
Yeah.
So I don't have any pressure. I'm fortunate to not have that pressure of paying for school, paying for bills, all this stuff. Like I could fund my life, or I could fund the stuff that I love, like cameras and stuff, and do whatever I want and not have to worry about the biggest thing, which is money. So that's where I'm at right now, just exploring different things, doing YouTube for free, these podcasts, right? Yeah. And sooner or later, when I need the money, since I'm starting now, it's like, you know what? Look, like now I could get ads. Now my viewership is so much that I could get ads on these podcasts and I can start monetizing it, right? So I think... go ahead. Continue on like your timeline. It's interesting.
It is but you were saying like, the highs and the lows, like that was the lowest for me because I wasn't seeing any of the fruits of the labor. You know what I mean? I'm like, did I make a big mistake by trying to do this? Like, am I crazy for trying to be an artist? Like, is this okay? Like,
self-doubt.
Yeah. So I was going through all of that stuff. And none of I didn't have anyone to relate to because I'm like, I don't know anyone else my age that's trying to do this. So I was living in Bolton at the time when I started. So then I moved to Toronto and I met other like young creative people. That was helpful for sure. Cause like, where did I move?
Where did you meet these people? Through social media?
Other people interning. Social media wasn't even like a thing yet. Like,
yeah, really, eh?
Like like Facebook, yes, but like Instagram happened like what 2012 or 13 or something like that.
I think so.
Yeah, and this was still like 2008-9, so it wasn't like full like social media yet.
Yeah, bro.
So like when you wanted to connect with someone, you'd get their phone number and email and meet them at a coffee shop. Like you wouldn't be like how me and you met. We're just like, hey bro, what's up? Like let's do, like it wouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
So
which is, I'm like glad that I'm able to do that. Like after everyone's like, oh, social media is this and that. Like, I'm able to connect with people without having to work off through like referrals. Like it could literally just be like, hey, look at this guy's page, and someone could look at my whole page and be like, oh, I like what you do. Let's chat. Right.
Yeah. My thoughts on that are like, I know there's a lot of frowning on like the younger generation because everybody says, oh, they have everything handed to them, or, oh, it's so easy now for you. You have social media. that's not what I'm trying to say in this story. Like what I'm trying to say was those are the tools that I used at the time.
Yeah.
But you having those tools now, that's like the way that I look at it is like my family that came from Italy to Canada, they came here to put my parents in a better position for their life, and my parents did the same for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at the next generation that way too, where I'm like, you guys are all going to do what you can with what you have. And it all really comes down to, it doesn't really matter what tools you have. It comes down to like what you can do, what kind of stories you're going to tell and all of that. That's why even, 100 years ago, there's still like iconic artists.
There's no limit to creativity. Like, it just goes more. It increases the more you do it, right?
Yeah. Maybe the landscape of it has changed, but like there's still trees on it. So it's
facts,
the same thing.
We're going around like the beginning of the 2010s. Where were you in your career?
So at the beginning of the 2010s, I was signing with different agencies. So I signed with 4 different agencies over a 5-year period. And the reason I did that was as I was growing and escalating, the type of jobs I was doing, there's like legal things, insurance stuff, production stuff that these companies won't work with a young person a lot of the time unless you have, the proper people in place. So I outgrew being freelance at that moment. I didn't know how to, I'm sure you can do it freelance for sure. I didn't know how at 22 to manage that side of it as well. So, I was emailing different, agents and saying, hey, I have a opportunity. I'd love to work with you on it. Can we talk about this? And, maybe I can continue to work with you. You can get me jobs. I can do all my jobs through you, blah, 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 blah.
How do agencies work? Is it kind of just like a record label kind of thing?
Basically, when you sign with an agency, it would be like the photographer version of signing with a label, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah. So they take a commission of everything that you do, but they provide you with like XYZ of services, to do that.
Which is fair, man. Especially because did you just sign in with another agency? You just said that.
I in that 5-year chunk. So this is like 2010 to 2015. I found that agencies were kind of like dating, where I'm like, yeah, we're like in this relationship, but it doesn't feel right, but they're nice people, but it's not for me. Like, I don't know. Like,
well, you need it. I think first, like, I don't know, but for thinking about it through like what you were saying, agencies are important because it grows who you know, where you are in your career, and it gives you jobs. And some of those
agencies, though, they're focused on
money,
the numbers.
Yeah.
So they're just selling you, and you have to do what they're giving you a job. You have to do it, but they're not growing. Like for me, I'm not an artist that just wants to work. Like I want to work a specific way. So I wanted management more than I wanted, let's say like an agency representative. Yeah. And that's where I grew into now, where like the guy that I'm working with, his name's Mike, and my agency's called Sting Productions. That's where they rep me. So Sting not only like they represent me and the growth of my artistic like vision. So there's, which
is like your main goal.
And without that, then it's just somebody,
paying you.
Yeah. And that's not what I wanted to do.
How do you gain respect in this industry of filmmaking and photography?
I think it's a little bit of like, you got to have a few things under your belt at like achievement wise first, because, it's like, hey, Michael, yeah, he just worked with Drake. Like immediately I'm going to take you seriously because of that. So as much as I'm not trying to promote that, that's why I was like trying to figure out how to say it. You got to have a certain amount of like selling points to get that level of respect. Like it's just the way it is. Like if I said like, hey, this person, I want you to meet Michael. He just worked the weekend and Drake and blah, blah, blah. They're like going to have respect for you like immediately. It's just a fact. So that's the truth of the matter. And then there's the other side of the matter, which is you get respect based on how you work with people. I have a really good reputation, I believe, with like being a good person on set and like not being an asshole and taking people's opinions and making sure everyone's eating and like, that things are respectful and whatnot. But yeah, part of it's the way you work, and the other part of it's like what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard because there's no really definition to it.
Yeah.
That's why I just blatantly asked like a broad question, because everyone has a different perspective of how to gain respect, whether that's doing something for like a big name artist, right? Like in order for you to get Fashion Santa on the shoot, you needed to have some sort of portfolio. Was that done through your agencies?
Yeah, I met his name is Paul Mason, Fashion Santa. I met Paul on a job like years and years ago before he was doing that. And I was very, very like opinionated about the way I was shooting at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe I gained his respect because he was like, that young kid is pretty confident in what he's doing. That's interesting. And then we did a creative together, and that did really well. And it just happened to flow that we had a good vibe working together. But he's been around like so many important artists and brands like around the world.
Yeah.
So I know that if I can give him clear direction, that I'll get the respect back too, because he's not judging me off of like, oh, like you're not at this level or that level. It just comes down to how you can direct somebody. So I have a certain style of how I like to pull, body language out of people, or get them to move on set. And it just ended up working really well.
When they hire you, especially now, it's like they don't know what to expect. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't know whether it's like it's going to be an amazing product or not. So you have already that pressure of like, if this is not good, I don't know what's going to happen with me. Like what my reputation.
That becomes the norm after a while too. Like you just get to a point where like you become comfortable in that pressure.
Yeah.
And that really just allows you to like, I don't know. I think once you can get past that, it's like being on camera. Like if the camera's on you and you feel like you're on camera, you're like all weird and like whatever. But then once you get past that completely, you just learn that you're being yourself, and you're probably going to learn something about yourself too watching it back. But
that's a good analogy.
So that pressure for me, I'll relate it to like being on camera. Once you get that comfort level, you know how to speak that language, you know how to act a certain way, and you know how to deal with it. And there's people that are going to be intimidating, and there's people that are going to be like ferocious and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like whatever you did to get you in this room, keep doing that, because that's why
facts.
You're here.
Yeah, so, like that's there's a reason why you're filming.
If someone's going to flex on you and you're in the same room as them, it's like, but I'm in the same room as you. Like I did something too to be here. So you can't minimize or decredit or devalue what part of my journey I'm on just because you're farther than me. Like you're gonna get to the end before I do. So
yeah, bro. Yeah. I like that.
I can't even give you a number like of the quantity of times that I've been like, taking advantage of on a project, or like wasted my own time, or people that I had work on the project for free because like they rate my work, so they're working for free to get something for them, but then it's a terrible feeling. So it comes with it's part of the journey, but you get a little bit more control of it. You can see things before they happen. And you do your best to not allow it to happen. But if I'm going to sit here and say, oh, I'm never going to get, screwed over again, I'd be lying. Like it's going to happen.
Yeah. And I think that's what people like when they chase it. Like me, every time I do another podcast, the amount of times I'm like, hey, this is not going to happen. You guys don't know it, but the amount of times we stopped, and the battery and the lights and the ISO and the exposure and the focus, like there's so much more things that like shit's gonna fuck up.
Yeah.
Right? Things are gonna mess up, and that could go through like one day when I'm maybe your age, or my dad's age. Who knows where I'm going to be, right? Who knows if I'm going to be in Hollywood? Who knows if I'm going to be the biggest artist in Canada? Who knows if I'm just going to be living in a basement as a freelancer, right?
Yeah.
And the only thing that I put in my head is, I am going to win that Oscar. Even if I don't, I just want that to
Listen,
reach
there's
there,
an
right?
amazing quote. Winning isn't everything, but wanting to is. And that just comes down to... Like the attitude that you have. Like have the attitude of a winner and take yourself seriously, but whether or not you get an Oscar doesn't at all credit how good your work is.
And that's what I keep trying to remind myself every day, even though sometimes I'm like, oh fuck, how the fuck am I gonna make this in the movie business?
Yeah, it goes back to what I was saying before about the worst time in my career was the sort of that beginning part, because there's so much uncertainty of, is this going to be the right life choice?
Yeah. And it's scary, man.
Yeah. I couldn't even like, I just felt like even going like on like a trip for a weekend with my friends, like to something simple, like going to Niagara or like whatever, I wouldn't even like feel good when I would go, because I had all this guilt of like, but I should be working. I should be achieving things. I shouldn't be doing that. Like, yeah. So it's just like this mind game. And I think the beginning part is like maybe the most, the worst part, because I don't know if you ever heard that quote too, like the more you know, the less you know. So it's like the more I started to learn about photography, the industry, managing my own business, I'm like, I don't know shit. And people think I do. Yeah. And like, I haven't even really admitted that to myself yet, and now I'm like, oh my god!
But the thing is, I think we discredit ourselves a lot. Yeah, because you do know stuff. Like so, look at the photos you've done. Look at the experience. That this is called my ego wall. Every time I kind of put myself down of what I do, I always look at like the competitions I won, the achievements I've done at my age, and it kind of brings me back up to like, you know what? I'm good at what I do. I'm just not there yet. And you'll never really get there until you're,
Yeah, but is it really even about getting there? That's why, so to the people in your generation that are listening, that there's this fire that you have in your come up where you really want that validation. So, or to make it, or for people to look at you like you made it. Yeah. So the best part about that is not when you necessarily make it and people rate you really high and stuff. It's about you stop chasing, you get out of that battle with yourself and you just start believing it too. So it's like, I'm like professionally delusional. Like I believe that I can like create all these visions in my head and sell them for money. And I'm cool with that. Like, that's just like where I'm at. And when I was younger, I was like, oh, but I have to have all these clients on I have to put like this on my website and show that I have these clients, and I have to get published in these magazines, and I needed that validation. I needed people to know I'm young, but I'm professional. Like you can take me seriously, but I wasn't taking myself seriously. I wanted that off of other people. Yeah. So when I started getting that off of myself, then I'm like, oh, this is a party. Like, this is great. So I really started to enjoy the journey. I was talking to you about like 2010 to 2015 and like being experimental with stuff and with agencies and whatever. Probably 2015 onward, I really started to enjoy it because I grew into my own skin as a person. I grew into my own skin as an artist, in my relationships too. And then the biggest reward in the world is like people already taking you seriously before the project starts, and then they help elevate your idea. So you're not making it like, this is my idea and you can't work with me unless you agree. It's like, you don't want yes people. You want people that are going to challenge you, that are going to push you and elevate you. And those relationships are privileged. So
yeah, man. Yeah. Well, honestly, I think we go on and on. There's so many different topics that we could cover about, monetization or, all the accomplishments and like, but the industry is too big to fit it all in like an hour. I don't know how long this podcast will be after the cuts, but thank you for having me interview you, man. Like, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
It was fun. I hope we both learned each other. I know I learned a lot about the industry and about, you as a person. And now we're going to take some portraits. Yeah.
So have to. My name is Mathew Guido with one T. So M-A-T. It's like my biggest thing in my whole life. My parents gave me a Mathew name that I have to always tell people. One T. So I'm Mathew with one T. MathewGuido.com. Instagram is at Mathew Guido, and all my other social links are there too. So,
oh my god, with sunset, exposure's all fucked up. Whatever.
It's okay. We have some psychedelic exposure-y mixed lighting going on. I like it.
All right, thank you for coming on.
Thanks, man.
This is another episode of Teen Talks Podcast. Thanks for watching.
It don't matter.